Welcome to Inside the Broncos, football in the West. Larry Pulowski from 12 KTRV and Jeff Caves from KTIK, 93.1 The Ticket, and Idaho Sports Talk fame. Caves, what the heck are you going to do this weekend? There's no Boise State game.
Play tennis like an idiot. I mean, on some levels, I'd rather just be sitting around like the rest of you guys watching pro and college football. But so no break for me, Poe. I'll be breaking a leg.
All right. Well, try to stay safe on the tennis court.
Right.
But there's going to be a lot of action. We're going to break down last week's game at Nevada. We're also going to talk about, at the end of the show, instead of previewing next week's game, we're going to talk a little bit about games that are going to affect Boise State.
Right.
And there's a lot of things on the docket in the next couple weeks that could really turn the tide in the Mountain Division of this conference.
Yeah, well, especially, Boise State stays at one loss. Different world. But, Utah State controls their own destiny. Wyoming controls their own destiny on the mountain side of it because they haven't lost yet. It's when you create a loss, all of a sudden you start looking at, okay, who else has to lose to get me back into this? And that's where Boise State is right now. Of course, they need Air Force to lose, but we'll break it down.
Well, we're going to go through some of those scenarios for sure. Now let's go back in time just a little bit and talk about the University of Nevada, Reno, as I like to call them, just from the old days. Talk about the environment down there. I heard all kinds of different things. I had my Facebook experts told me that there were still a lot of drunken, obnoxious, crazy people. Then I heard other people say it wasn't so bad this year. So what did you see?
Well, I mean, it's down to your personal experience. I can't control how 4,500 people,
exactly
what bar they went to, what restaurant, how they felt in an airport. To me, at the end of the day, it's about the team. You're there to support Boise State football. And I think sometimes in certain environments, you've got to put your personal situation just a little bit aside, all things being equal, as long as you're not physically being challenged. And realize that team needs your support more than you should be worried about somebody being obnoxious to you in the airport, which I had happen to me. The students yelling the F word at the Boise State team before the game in warm-ups, big deal. I mean, really, to me, big deal.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the college environment, and you're going to get some of that. No matter where you go, you're going to get a little bit of razzing, and good-natured razzing's okay. You start dropping
It's over the line from there. It's a little more than that.
Obviously over the line. But, hey, that is college football. All right, when we come back, we're going to dissect that Nevada game, get into some of the X's and O's right here on Inside the Broncos, Football in the West, brought to you by Even Green Technology, Treasure Valley's solar expert.
Football in the West is brought to you by Even Green Technology, the Treasure Valley Solar Authority, and Steve's Hometown Ford and Steve's Hometown Toyota, 100% committed to your satisfaction. Also by Western Heating and Cooling, turn to the experts, and Leisure Time Spas and Hearth Products. Come see us at Leisure Time. You'll be glad you did.
We're back with Inside the Broncos, football in the West. Time now to go back and talk about the Wolfpack of Nevada and how Boise State went down and stole a game. Well, they kind of stole a game. They almost gave it away, then they took it back. What a game. It was great to watch. It was a super game. Now, I will say this, the TV broadcast was horrible. For CBS, that was embarrassing. I mean, they've really got to check their whole card. But anyway, the game was awesome to watch.
Yeah, it was. It's up and back and, back and forth, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, that had its rough spots defensively for Boise State. And then if you're a Nevada fan or you just appreciate football, Cody Fajardo struggled through 4 picks. He overthrew guys. He threw on the run, overthrew guys. He scrambled around off his back foot and just threw stuff up. He threw a pick 6. They tried to cover and say that receivers may have been an issue or protection. It was all Fajardo, unfortunately. I think he wanted it too bad, and he just threw some balls he shouldn't have.
We're getting to a point now, Jeff, where you wonder if the defensive backfield and the alignments that the defense is in are really causing quarterbacks problems, because there is a tremendous amount of interceptions that this team has gotten off of poorly thrown passes. Poorly thrown passes, in my opinion, are 2 things. Lack of focus by the quarterback, which you've already mentioned, or scheme that they can't read. Is it scheme that they can't read?
I'm sure at times. I'm sure at times, because if you look at one defense that Boise State's fallen in love with, it's the 4-3.
Oh, yeah.
And at all costs, they want to stay in it. They feel their best playmakers and players are Gray and Vallejo specifically. You saw Martirano get on the field. They want Corey Bell on the field. They want Darian Thompson on the field. Dante Dion doesn't seem to be able to finish a game, unfortunately, but other guys are stepping up. But still, Nevada scored 46 points. So that wasn't the greatest defensive effort that you'd like to see.
Yeah. Well, Martirano, I got to see him at Fruitland High when they were in the championship game a couple of years ago, and he was, obviously the biggest player on the field. But he's even growing more. I mean, that kid's big. But Tanner Vallejo, pound for pound, one of the most impressive performances I have ever seen by whatever position he's playing. Is it nickel, linebacker, strong safety? I don't know what he's playing, but whatever he's playing, that kid was absolutely tremendous.
It's tremendous. They bring him from all over the field. He has tremendous willingness to get to the football. Dan Hawkins had a conversation with me, compared him closely to Corey Hall.
Wow.
Has a nose for the ball, tremendous will to get there, and then just brings it on the next play. So they like to move him around. That's why I like him at nickel. They like to blitz him, bring him from the edges, because he can get to a play. I think he's the best player on the field for Boise State, even without counting Jay Ajayi. He's been more consistent.
Well, speaking of Jay Ajayi, the J train got back on track, at least in the second half, and certainly the receiving core without Matt Miller was tested, and they stepped up to the plate. 9 different receivers caught the ball against Reno, and Ajayi goes for 150 plus yards.
Yeah, well, he is the train. I mean, he has the ability to bounce, and Nevada's defensive players, I think, got tired at times. Jeremy McNichols had his red shirt year burned. He's a red shirt. He was supposed to red shirt.
Long Beach kid, right?
He was a kid that was a wide receiver primarily in high school. Boise State was one of the schools that promised he could play running back. So that's why he decided on Boise State against some other schools that he was looking at. And here he is as a hybrid. He's the future.
All right, very good. Well, Jeff, thanks for that analysis. When we come back, time to get into the Mountain West and see what games are on track this week that are going to affect Boise State. We'll be back on Inside the Broncos, Football in the West, right after this. Welcome back to Inside the Broncos, Football in the West, brought to you by Even Green Technology. Hey, don't forget, if you'd like to sign up for some tickets to the Fresno game, we're giving them away first thing next week, so get online and sign up today. You can win a couple of beautiful Bronco coffee mugs and 4 South End Zone tickets to enjoy Friday night, Fresno State. Can't beat that deal. All right, Jeff, let's talk about Air Force Academy going into Logan, Utah to take on the Aggies of Utah State. This, on paper, sets up to be a tremendously interesting matchup.
Yeah, there is. We got new quarterback at Utah State, Darryl Gerritsen. It's not totally new to Bronco fans, but he's throwing the ball really well, as evidenced in his BYU effort. And Air Force could be the real deal. We're going to find out a little bit more about them. Utah State has a stout defense, as BYU found out, and they've got an effective offense through the air. Is this the letdown week for Air Force, or are they the real deal? I'll talk about it in my pick segment, but that pass defense for Air Force has some issues, and will it get exposed? And if it does, will Utah State turn the ball over like Boise State, or will they not?
Well, and I think it'll be interesting to see how Air Force reacts on the road. They haven't had a lot of experience on the road against good teams this year, so that'll be interesting to watch. But I watched that entire BYU-Utah State game last week up in McCall. I had nothing else to do, so I sat up till midnight and watched that game. But I was really impressed again with that defense of Utah State's. That is, as you said, it's very solid. They get the job done. They run around and they stop teams on third down. They really have a penchant for that. Yeah. So it sets up well for Utah State.
Well, with the Air Force, you're going to have to stop them on third down. You better have some great run support systems, and then what they're doing most effectively now, and they did it to Navy, is the surprise pass. There's not a lot of passes, but just when you triple optioned out, and the dive or the pitch or the quarterback keeper, they just fake those things, step back, and boop, and you got a big play on your hands.
Well, I guess we can thank Utah State for one thing. They did knock Taysom Hill out of the rotation for Utah State, or for BYU.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Colorado State. Goes back into Reno. Nevada with their second home game in a row. Didn't work out so well for them last week. You think this week's going to work out differently for them?
I do. I like Colorado State in some ways. If you look at how dominant they've been, Poe,
they've been
the
good
last 13 games, Colorado State's 10-3.
Wow.
So they've had a good run. You know, Boise State's beaten them a couple times, but that's just for Boise State. But they're bringing in a very hot quarterback in Grayson, and Higgins, his wide receiver, caught 4 touchdown passes last week against a pretty poor Tulsa team. They've got a running back in Hart, the Alabama transfer, who I think is settling in and doing a great job for them. This is their biggest test. I think Fajardo, though, is the key. As long as he doesn't turn it over 4 times, I mean, with a couple of turnovers, I like them at home. I think they're a tough team. I picked them to win that division, so I don't think what I've seen by now, I'll abandon them. They came close to Boise State, and Colorado State didn't. So they're on the road. So that's how I see it.
Well, I think that's probably a good pick. And Fajardo, you know, he had 1 pick coming into that game last week against Boise State in 4 games, threw 4 in 1 game. So I think maybe he's got that out of his system. But his running style is just so deceptive. And he does such a good job of keeping that ball and being able to cut up the field. And when he gets going, kid runs pretty doggone good.
Yeah,
so we'll see if Colorado State can do it. All right, that wraps up our Mountain West Roundup. When we come back, it's time to make some picks, and this guy over here is getting hot when he's sticking with the Mountain West Conference. We'll tell you how we did, who we're going to pick this week on Inside the Broncos, football in the West. Welcome back to Inside the Broncos, football in the West, brought to you by Even Green Technology. Time now to make some picks. Now, we're going to go to the tail of the tape, and this guy over here is getting hot. 2 weeks in a row. Now, you got to go with trends. It's all about trending, right? Isn't that trendy to go with trends?
Well, it's better to be going in the right direction.
Well, you're going in the right direction.
I'm just staying with the Mountain West. That's
staying
the bottom
with the
line.
Mountain West. Know what you know and go
That's
with
right.
what you
Do
know.
what I know. Yeah.
I get it. 7-11. You're making a comeback. I still suck. Rutgers killed me last week. I had them by 3. They won by 2. Okay, so that killed me there. We both didn't pick Boise State right. So there you go. Well, let's move on to this week, Jeff. What do you got on a docket?
Well, we've talked about this game before. I like Fajardo here. I like him to cut back his turnovers. I like the home field advantage. And I look at the template Boise State's laid out to beat Colorado State. I don't see why Nevada can't follow it plus some. I thought they played BSU a lot better than Colorado State. So I don't understand why the wrong team is favored here.
Yeah, you're right here. I think Fajardo's the key to this whole thing. And your next pick of the week, you're going with Utah State, giving up some points.
Yeah, I do.
At Air Force.
I like home field. I think Air Force is going to find out what another passing offense can do to them,
right,
and a defense that is prepared, and they will play as well as Boise State did. They just won't make the turnovers. They better not make the same amount of turnovers, and I think they should win.
Really like this defense, but you know how weird that offense
Sure.
is. They've got to get acclimated to that, but that's still, I think, a good pick. All right, and your third game's with no Boise State. We're staying with the Mountain West. You're going to take 5 and the Cowboys.
A lot of tragedy at Hawaii with Norm Chow, and his wife is sick. He's got a lot of issues on his hands back on the main line. He had to even think about leaving last week's game. He's been gone a while. He's the game plan guy. Those kids will be distracted, and Wyoming's tough as nails.
Well, we really need Hawaii to win that game, but yeah, I kind of agree with you that might not happen. All right, let's go to my picks this week. I'm going to take the Wildcats of Arizona, take a couple points over to your Trojans. I'm sorry, I know you're a Trojan lover,
Fine.
but that's
I think
the way
they'll
we're
get
going to
hammered.
roll.
I think that's a great play.
Second on the docket, TCU is getting 10.5 at Baylor. Baylor is good.
Explosive.
Both defenses are really good. I'm not sure TCU's offense can keep up with Baylor, but we'll see how the defenses work. I'm going to go with the points anyway and pray for a low-scoring game. Well, that probably won't.
Good luck.
I'm going to take the 10. This game, with the Cougars getting 17, I just don't think Stanford can score enough points. 17's a lot. I understand Stanford's a much better team than Washington State, but I'm going to roll with it anyway.
All right, that's what it's all about, Poe.
Take the points, baby. Take the points. All right, that's Picks of the Week right here on Inside the Broncos, football in the West. Welcome back to Inside the Broncos, football in the West, brought to you by Even Green Technology, the Treasure Valley's solar expert. Give them a call today. If you're looking for solar, thinking about moving that way, they're the guys. All right, USC at Arizona, Pac-12 action at its best. Couple of really good games this week in the Pac-12.
Yeah, Pac-12 is living up to expectations that just could be other teams that are doing the living. You know, UCLA's got to come back, Oregon's got to come back. But this matchup right here, Trojans already got 2 losses. They're out of the national conversation. Arizona's the thick in the middle of it.
Arizona racking up some yardage too as far as offense goes. You know, when you're averaging over 500 yards in total offense, you know you got something going right, and they're well over that number. Just a very impressive attack that they've put on the field for Arizona. And, you know, Rich Rodriguez got a lot of grief when he went there, and he's gotten not so much grief in the last few weeks because they're undefeated.
Well, now he's got a young quarterback, and Solomon's a kid he's going to be able to build around. He's a kid out of Bishop Foreman High in Las Vegas, so he took him out of there. He's starting him as a young freshman, and he's pulling the results. He's producing, and this zone read option is very difficult. That's why I don't like Southern Cal here until they can prove they can do it. Go back and watch the film against Boston College, because I know Rich Rod has. And if they even perform half as well as BC on the ground, and they're in Tucson, you know, boy, playing USC is still a big deal. I mean, if you look at their record, it really shouldn't be as big a deal as it is. It's still a big deal. And they love to kill you. And emotionally, it's the big game of the year. So I think Trojans in big trouble.
Yeah, if you're in the Pac-12 and USC comes to town, that is a big deal. That's always been that way, and it probably won't change as long as USC continues to be as competitive as they have been. Oregon at UCLA, 2 teams both coming off reeling losses, tough ones that they really are going to have trouble getting over. Which team's going to get over it quicker? This one's at UCLA.
This one, I think, when we started the season out, said, okay, when Oregon plays UCLA, somebody's going to stay in the playoff hunt, and somebody's going to drop out. And that's not what's happened. Now they both have losses. Now definitely one drops out. I don't see Oregon having back-to-back bad weeks, and I think they have a quarterback that's extremely difficult to contain, as does UCLA. I just think that Oregon has better athletes overall. I like their ability here.
Well, I would totally agree with you there. I think the game being in the Rose Bowl may have something to do with it, but, you know, Oregon, when they get cranked up, if they get things running and that motor gets going, they are just almost impossible to stop, and that was what happened to them last week. They never really got going like they normally do. So I think this week, if they can get that thing going, and you know that they're going to be revved up, and Mariota's going to have something special.
Well, you better have protection, though, Poe, because he's getting sacked way too much, and UCLA's offensive line has challenges. So somebody's going to get too much pressure on a quarterback. To me, it'll be who can run the football and stay out of 3rd and long.
All right. Well, a couple of pretty good tilts in the Pac-12 conference. Keep your eyes on those. When we come back, we're going to go through the Mountain West standings. We're going to talk about some games that are upcoming that could affect Boise State and their chance to win that Mountain Division and get into that championship game in the first part of December. We'll be back with more on Inside the Broncos, football in the West. Welcome back to Inside the Broncos, football in the West, brought to you by Even Green Technology. Well, Jeff, we already established at the top of the show you're going to play tennis this weekend. I've got grandchild, little kid soccer to go watch. You know how exciting that is.
That's an hour and a half. Come on.
But 2 games. I got 2 grandkids to play, so this is brutal. I got
to recover from that.
And I guess I'll get to mow the lawn, clean the house, you know, whatever it is that I do on the weekends. But guess what? I'm going to have on a lot of football games.
Good.
And there's a lot of games that affect Boise State this week. And right now, let's go to the standings and take a look at what we've got on tap. In the Mountain Conference, obviously Wyoming 3-2, but no defeats in conference. Boise State with a loss, Air Force with a loss, everybody else with a loss. Utah State hasn't played yet.
Well, that's why I'm saying Utah State and Wyoming are really in control of their own destinies until they play each other. Boise State still has to play Wyoming. You definitely at Wyoming. You need to have another loss for Air Force, and then Boise State, if they win out, will be fine. They just have to, take care of business. They've already defeated Colorado State, so that's going to help them quite a bit.
Well, then if you look at that scenario, we probably would like to be rooting, and you're obviously going to be rooting because you just made the pick over there, that Utah State's going to take care of Air Force this weekend. Give Air Force that second loss because they've beat the Broncos. That gets them out of the mix. And this is all assuming Boise State runs the rest of the season. They can't.
Once you get to 2 losses, should Boise State, because we were doing the math, should Boise State have lost to Nevada, you're looking at a 1 out of 3 chance to get into the Mountain West Championship game. That's how critical that game was. They were truly with their backs against the wall.
So what does it take then in a secondary game for Wyoming to go over to the islands and actually lose? How much focus will they have to lose to what is a very average to below average Hawaii Warrior team?
Oh, all they got to do is watch the Washington tape, because the Huskies almost lost.
They did.
So that's all they got to do. And you're going from, the highest elevation, right? In the Mountain West Conference at Wyoming, back to sea level, and you're from Wyoming and you're going to Hawaii. They'll have plenty of distractions. And this coach, this is the first time he's done this too. He's not been at this level before. So they've got plenty of opportunity. I just think Hawaii's distracted as well. But maybe they'll win one for Chow and all that. So Wyoming could be in trouble if they lose again.
All right, and then the other game that we talked about in the Mountain West segment, Colorado State, Nevada. Colorado State with one loss to Boise State.
Right.
Doesn't really matter who wins that game, but at home, and as bad as Nevada played last week, you just got to believe that they'll rebound because they've played tough this year. I mean, they went toe-to-toe with Arizona in Tucson and lost by 7 points. They had an anomaly of a game last week, and I think Boise State dialed up some defenses they just didn't get. But I really don't believe Colorado State's got enough, although they've played really well lately, to pull this off. Who do we want to see win this game? Obviously, Nevada.
Yeah, Boise State's already beat Colorado State, so that's not going to be a challenge for them as it relates to the conference race. If you'd like to have another shot at Nevada, you want Nevada to win. And since Boise State owns the head-to-head, if we come down to a tie on who should host the Mountain West Championship game, it'll go to a head-to-head. So if both teams have one loss, but Boise State beat Nevada, the Bronco fans will be happy to know Mountain West Championship game being Albertson Stadium.
All right, well, let's turn our attention to a couple of weeks down the road, and let's look at some games there that might affect Boise State. New Mexico State at Air Force. This game could be the shortest game in the history of the Mountain West Conference with the way these two teams run the football.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It could go really quickly. Is there a prayer that Bob Davies can get his Lobos off the deck and get them to win against this team? I just don't see it.
I'm sure there's always a chance. But as you said, when both teams run the similar offense, there won't be many chances. If you don't get it done on a certain possession, you're not going to get that many more chances. So they do have a great quarterback that runs this well. They have to go on the road and do this. You need Air Force to get this other loss, so maybe it comes here.
All right, well, let's keep our eyes on the standings. This week, no Boise State. You can watch all the rest of the teams in the Mountain West Conference. Jeff, no show this week, so time to play some tennis.
That's right.
We'll be back next week with more Inside the Broncos football in the West. Thank you to Steve's Hometown Ford in Ontario, Steve's Hometown Toyota, and also to our title sponsor, Even Green Technology, the Treasure Valley Solar Expert. We'll see you next week.
Inside the Broncos, football in the West is brought to you by Even Green Technology, the Treasure Valley Solar Authority, and Steve's Hometown Ford and Steve's Hometown Toyota, 100% committed to your satisfaction. Also by Western Heating and Cooling, turn to the experts, and Leisure Time Spas and Hearth Products. Come see us at Leisure Time. You'll be glad you did.